In the final days of 1900, on the remote Flannan Isles, a lonely sentinel of light stood against the fury of the North Atlantic. Manned by 3 seasoned keepers, the lighthouse was a beacon of safety. But then it went dark. A passing steamer first noted the extinguished lamp, an unnerving silence in a place defined by its constant sweeping beam. When the relief vessel Hesperus finally reached the island, its captain was met with a scene of profound strangeness. The lighthouse doors were closed, the lamp was pristine, and inside a table was set for a meal that was never eaten. Only a single overturned chair and a stopped clock hinted at a sudden, inexplicable departure. The 3 men had vanished from the face of the earth. No bodies, no messages, no answers. Just a cold, empty tower and a mystery that endures to this day. In the unforgiving North Atlantic, the Flannan Isles stand as remote, weather-beaten sentinels. On the largest, Island Moor, a vital lighthouse was manned by 3 men, James Duckett, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. Duckett, 43, was the principal keeper, a seasoned veteran with over 2 decades of service and a family man. Thomas Marshall, the second assistant, was a former sailor in his late 20s, accustomed to the sea's violent moods. The third, an occasional keeper, was Donald MacArthur, a quick-tempered ex-soldier of 40. Their lives were a strict, monotonous cycle of duty and profound isolation. For weeks at a time, their entire world was confined to the 23-meter stone tower and the windswept rock it stood upon. Their singular task was to maintain the light, a vital beacon for mariners in these treacherous waters. In late November 1900, they began their rotation, a routine assignment that would become their last. Their daily rhythm was predictable: polishing the immense lens, trimming the wick, winding the giant clockwork mechanism. They were the lonely guardians of the coast, unaware they were sailing into a mystery that would outlive them all and become legend. The first sign that something was profoundly amiss on Island Moor came from the sea. On December 15, 1900, the steamer Arctur was battling its way from Philadelphia to Leith. The weather was poor, with heavy seas, conditions when a lighthouse's guidance is most critical. Captain Holman scanned the horizon for the Flannan light, but where its beam should have been, there was only impenetrable darkness. The lamp, visible from over 20 miles away, was extinguished. For a lighthouse with 3 experienced and diligent keepers, this was an alarming and inexplicable failure. A dark light was a dereliction of duty of the highest order, unthinkable for men of the Northern Lighthouse Board like Duckett and Marshall. Captain Holman dutifully noted the anomaly in his ship's log, a factual entry that would become critical evidence. With no wireless radio, he could not immediately report his finding. The Arctur continued its journey, leaving the silent, darkened island behind. The warning was recorded, a secret held only by the ship's log and the churning ocean. Christmas passed, and concern began to mount on the mainland. The relief vessel Hesperus, scheduled to service the island and rotate the crew, had been delayed for days by severe gales. Finally, on Boxing Day, December 26th, the weather broke sufficiently, and Captain James Harvey set a course for the Flannan Isles. On board was Joseph Moore, the relief keeper who was meant to take over from one of the men on Island Moor. As the island materialized from the sea mist, a deep sense of unease settled over the entire crew. The landing platform was empty. The customary flag was not flying from the mast, a breach of protocol. Most unnervingly, there was no sign of life, no keepers waiting to welcome them and help secure the vessel. Captain Harvey ordered the ship's horn to be sounded, its powerful blast echoing across the water and the empty cliffs. There was no reply. He then ordered a signal flare to be fired, its red arc a desperate call into the profound silence. Again, nothing. The island remained stubbornly, unnaturally quiet. A profound sense of dread gripped the men aboard the Hesperus. Something was terribly wrong. With the sea still too rough for a full landing party, Joseph Moore volunteered to be rowed ashore alone. He began the long, lonely climb up the steep stone steps carved into the cliffside, heading towards a silent lighthouse and an unknown fate. Joseph Moore reached the lighthouse compound, his heart pounding with apprehension. He found the main gate to the enclosure closed, as was the entrance door to the living quarters, both unusual but not impossible. He let himself inside. The interior was eerily still and cold. In the main living area, a scene of ordinary life was frozen in time, yet deeply unsettling. The beds were unmade, and the fireplace was cold, its embers long since extinguished. On the wall, the clocks had stopped. The true heart of the mystery, however, lay in the kitchen. A meal of salted mutton, potatoes, and pickles was laid out on the table, ready to be eaten, but it remained entirely untouched. And next to the table, one of the heavy wooden chairs had been knocked over, as if its occupant had risen in a sudden violent panic. It was the only sign of disarray in the otherwise tidy space. A search of the tower revealed that the lamps were perfectly cleaned and refilled, ready for lighting. The keepers' foul weather gear, their oilskins were gone, suggesting they had all rushed out into a storm. But a crucial detail defied this logic. One set of oilskins still hung on its peg. Why would one man venture out into a raging Atlantic tempest without his protective gear? The tidy scene, punctuated by that single overturned chair and a missing coat, presented a chilling, unsolvable paradox. The official investigation fell to Robert Muirhead, the superintendent of the Northern Lighthouse Board, who had recruited all three men personally. He arrived on Island Moor to conduct a thorough search for any clue. Inside the lighthouse, he discovered the keeper's logbook. The final entries, purportedly chronicling events up to December 15th, were baffling. They began on December 12th, describing a severe storm with winds the likes of which I have never seen in 20 years, as Principal Keeper Duckett had apparently stated. The log noted that the men, even the tough Donald MacArthur, were agitated and the men were praying. An entry for December 13th spoke of the storm continuing, with the men unable to leave the tower. The final entry on December 15th simply read, "Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all." The entries painted a picture of experienced men terrified by an unprecedented weather event. Yet, this narrative contained a fundamental, chilling flaw. Shore-based weather stations and logs from ships in the area reported no such storm between December 12th and 14th. The weather had been rough, but not tempestuous. The hurricane-force winds described in the log seemed to have existed only on Island Moor. Was it a shared delusion? A freak wave of unimaginable size? Or was the logbook entry a fabrication, a cryptic clue to a much darker event? The phantom storm was the final, inexplicable piece of the puzzle. The silence on Island Moor was not a peaceful one. It was a heavy, watchful quiet that seemed to press in from the sea and sky. For centuries, the Flannan Isles were steeped in folklore, places where the veil between worlds was said to be thin. Sailors spoke of phantom ships and strange lights. Locals held superstitions so deep they refused to harm the island's birds, believing they held the souls of the departed. In the wake of the keeper's disappearance, these old tales gained new life. Was it the work of the little people, the fae of Gaelic legend, angered by the intrusion of the lighthouse? Or perhaps something more sinister rose from the depths, a creature of the abyss that claimed the men for its own? Some whispered of madness, a sudden violent frenzy born from the crushing isolation and the ceaseless roar of the Atlantic. A fight could have broken out, leading to a tragic accident and a panicked cover-up. Others spun tales of foreign spies, abducting the men for their knowledge of the strategic shipping lanes. The wind carried these theories across the Hebrides, each one more fantastic than the last. But on the barren rock of Island Moor, the only answer was the cry of gulls and the relentless crash of waves against cliffs, guarding a secret that refused to be told. The mystery deepened with every passing day, turning from a maritime incident into a legendary ghost story. The official investigation sought concrete answers. Relief keeper Joseph Moore provided the initial chilling report. He found the main and kitchen doors closed and bolted from the inside. The lighthouse lamp, trimmed and refueled, was operating perfectly. Inside, the scene was one of abrupt interruption. A meal lay untouched on the kitchen table, and the clocks had all stopped. In the otherwise orderly space, a single detail was amiss: an overturned chair, suggesting sudden haste. The keepers' beds were unmade, and their oilskin coats were missing, suggesting they had gone outside. Superintendent Robert Muirhead's formal inquiry concluded that the keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur, were swept away by a colossal rogue wave during a fierce storm. This became the official explanation. But for those who knew the sea and the cautious nature of experienced keepers, the story felt incomplete. The evidence was too strange, the silence too absolute, and the official verdict too simple.